Okay. I would like to call the meeting to order.
This meeting will be conducted by audio and video conference without a physically present quorum of the Rock Island City Council due to the disaster declaration issued by Governor Pritzker. Because of this order related to COVID-19 health concerns affecting the state and the city, the mayor has determined that an in-person meeting at City Hall with all participants may not be practical or prudent. Alderpersons and staff may not all be physically present at City Hall due to the disaster, and physical attendance at City Hall may be limited. To participate remotely during the public comment or public hearing portion of the meeting, please join by phone.
All right, roll call.
Alderperson Robinson, absent. Alderperson Hurt, absent. Gilbert,
Present.
Swanson,
Here.
Parker, absent. Poulos,
Here.
Healy,
Here.
Mayor Tomes.
Here.
Okay, is there any public comment? Don't see anything, any remote public comment? Okay, Samantha.
I'll let City Manager Todd Thompson give an introduction.
Yep, thank you and good evening. We wanted to update you on the American Rescue Plan Act funding recommendations that we've made. As you'll remember, we met back in August, and then after that, we had one-on-one meetings with all of the council members to answer questions and talk more specifically about any interests or concerns. Tonight, we'll go over any revisions or additions that we've made to the plan. Samantha's going to update on the progress towards the focus groups on several items. We'll talk about phasing of the projects and things like that. But moving forward, I just wanted to kind of place this meeting in the context about where I anticipate we're going to go with the plan. If tonight we find the council's in general consensus on it, we'll bring it back for what I would call endorsement of the plan on October 10th. And I say endorsement rather than approval because it really is a plan. These items will be implemented and funded like any regular city project. So in some cases, there may be an agreement that comes back. For the items that are going to occur in 23 and 24, you will include those in the budget. Some of the items still need more specifics to be developed as well, and those will come back to you also. But our hope would be that we can get a general consensus on the plan, get it endorsed by the council in October, and then go to work, take that as direction to begin working on implementing, bringing back more specifics, bringing back items for approvals in the future. So with that, Samantha?
Thank you. Just to kind of recap where we're at, so on August 24th, we had a special meeting, and based on that meeting, Todd and I met individually with council members the last week of August and the first week of September, and that's where these changes and updates came from. So just to kind of give some context and background, and that's why we're here tonight. So the updated funding recommendations, I'm going to go over each detail of what changed. Of course, that is highlighted in your plan of the changes. The first one is the fleet update. So the amounts remain the same. The $334,000 for unrestricted, specifically for our snow fleet. We are taking that out to bid later this week or early next week. The contractor or who we were going to buy the snow fleet from continues to increase the price, so Public Works decided to take that out to bid to see what we can get out of that. So that project scope may or may not change. Yes?
I just have a question for Mike on the snow fleet. Mike, how many current snow plows do we have, or snow trucks, whatever you call them?
Approximately 12 are out on the street.
Okay, and how many need replacing?
8 currently. That's kind of a, I don't know, it's not a trick question, but I mean, there's more than 8 that need replacement, but at this current time, I'd say these are the emergency vehicles that need replaced.
Okay, and with 334,000, how many do we?
That's the deficit We have, I think, 1.7 million in the budget currently, in this year's budget.
Okay.
So that's the deficit that's needed, or was needed.
Is that all the money in that fleet fund?
It approximately, yes. It would deplete the replacement fund dollars.
Okay. Okay. So it's 1.7 plus this 334,000.
Correct.
Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome.
And then the continued amount of the 1.166 million of restricted. So far, we've got 3 ambulances that are approximately going to cost $900,000. There'll be 266,000 remaining. So we'll have to figure out what other fleet we want to use out of that allocation. The next change that was made was Infill Housing, as you recall, was up in restricted funds, 100,000, and then we had the new housing incentives down in unrestricted for 400,000. After talking with Miles and Todd, we decided to move those to unrestricted, put them in one category, and the reason for that, it gives the city much more flexibility. Maybe there's some kind of creative housing combination that we can do. If we continue to keep it the restricted versus unrestricted, we've got reporting requirements and constraints that we have to follow, as well as the timing, right? We'd only have through the end of 2026. So this gives the city a little more flexibility. Nothing's really changed other than we're putting them in one category together for that flexibility. Okay. Support to nonprofits, the consensus of council was to divide those up. We've got the mental health and homelessness and tourism, and I'll talk about those focus groups later on. And then consensus of council was support to the community groups, organizations that they have Botanical Center for 150,000, Backwater Gamblers for 100,000, MLK Fun Day for 20,000, QC Arts for 50,000. I did put the justifications for those, what the money would be used for in the updated plan, but I can go over that if council wishes, the details of each of those, of what those could be.
I have a
Yes.
question. So did those groups have to apply for the money?
No. Nope. That was a consensus among individual council members with conversations from those meetings.
How did we get to the point where those 4 were brought up?
Todd, go ahead.
Yeah, as we discussed, interest with individual council members, several of these were things that came up repetitively. The mayor, he talked with council members as well to try to develop a consensus as to support for these. These are numbers that still do need some more refinement, but they're based on needs that have been expressed by the organizations. So that's why these were included.
So
Okay.
I guess let's just go ahead and just
Say
address
it.
the elephant in the room.
Say it.
So
I'll back you up.
we have some organizations up here who did not go through a application process. We have organizations who've been coming to us regularly with a complete process. I'm just not comfortable with why some of these are up here and what are we willing or looking to gain from, the amounts that we're looking at giving out. What is that going to do for the city? And I know that may not be the correct way of actually wording it. I want to make sure I say this, in a positive way. But are we getting our bang for the buck with these ARPA funds? Because right now it seems like we're just doing deals. I'm not fully grasping how we are supporting some of these organizations and how does that fit into what we are trying to obtain as far as the city, our goals, all those things. I know we mentioned with the QC Arts, we don't even have anything really designed. That's just like an earmark. We don't even know what we're really doing with that. Yeah, so.
Can I interject? Go ahead,
wait.
Judith, I'm sorry.
No, I would just like to piggyback on what Alderman Robinson stated, because I agree with him. I just feel like these are just been backroom deals, especially the Botanical Center. I mean, I'll put the elephant in the room out there. The mayor's wife sits on the board. The mayor's been asking for this money for over a year, since ARPA came into being. It was supposed to be a lot more, and it's gotten whittled down. I would like to know, how did this, if there's no process, I mean, I think we owe it to the residents to explain how these four got chosen. Tourism is now receiving a total of $500,000, more than $500,000 in funding. And we have no background data on these organizations in terms of their impact within our city. We have no idea what they're using this money for to at least justify giving them this money.
And I will open up by saying, I'm the one that put the MLK Fund Day on there, and that wasn't even the amount I said on there, but I'm really struggling with seeing a city funded thing. It's not even, well, I can't even say city funded. A city department is dwindled down to 20,000 when we're giving 150 and 100,000 to organizations who I'm just not seeing the justification in this document. So I guess that's what I'm looking for. We have some buildings that we own, that we manage, that are in deficits, but we're giving money away for the same exact thing that we're still paying bills on for some of our buildings. And we can't say that this doesn't meet the guidelines because we're pretty much using unrestricted funds at this point, right? Is this unrestricted funds we're looking at?
It is. Each one of those organizations would meet the federal government requirements from ARPA if I decided to put those in restricted funds.
So did we look at what we are still owing as far as some of our buildings?
Well, that's a
Well,
very
I
good.
think, let's let the mayor speak. He's been trying to a couple times.
Well, that's fine, and I don't mean to interrupt. I'm trying to let people speak, but we talked about as city council using ARPA money and trying to leverage it with other either monies or some type of other way that it pays back to the city. And every one of these organizations draws that tourism, that there is a payback year after year by drawing in more people into our city with tourism. And it also serves the underserved in a lot of cases. The Botanical Center has free days that people are come in. The Backwater Gamblers is free all the time, accessible to anybody in any level, and so it works with the underserved. And the Quad City Arts puts on a lot of programs for the very diverse issues, along with then the tourism. So it checks two boxes, but that tourism, we can't cut that short on how that comes back to the city with people spending money in the city, along with having these amenities. And there is been some justification with a couple of the organizations already. For example, the Botanical Center, retiring the debt has been talked about at $92,000, along with then some of their other programs or things they're doing. The MLK, Moses, you and I did talk about that and the dollar amount, but the MLK is in the ARPA funds in another place. So they do have, they're in here twice in two different projects. So this isn't the only thing for them, dollar-wise. And so, and these are kind of the heart of the City of Rock Island organizations that support it day in, day out for years. And if we don't support them in this way, it makes it very difficult for them to continue to grow.
So Mayor, I understand everything you're saying. What I'm looking for specifically are measurables. From Botanical Center, measurables, what have they provided us? Because what I'm seeing here doesn't provide measures as far as visitors, as far as contributions to the city. How was it impacting these different organizations? It has, a partnership with the Rock Island Milan School District and the MLK Center. What are the measurables on that? Because,
and I think that's something that Todd talked about, the city manager talked about, is that these things are what we need to then eventually continue to vet out and get that data. Their data is there. There just hasn't been the time to get it in most cases. And so those are the things that we need to continue to request from them. There's nothing wrong with those questions. But that data is there, that they can, not just the Botanical Center, but all of them would be able to supply to where the fundings would go, what the measurable outcomes could be or should be. And
Just to clarify that, the intent wouldn't be just to give these people these amounts of money. We would put together a specific project plan and an agreement and bring that back to the council for approval, and it may not actually be this specific dollar amount.
So you're saying they have to have a project?
They do have projects.
Yeah.
But we
it
don't
would
have the-
clarify.
I guess I have a problem too. We're gonna help to pay the debt off of the Botanical Center when the city can't even pay its own debt on so many things. And like Alderman Robinson stated, we have buildings that don't even get funded in the regular budget cycle to do their regular maintenance that's needed.
So am I hearing from council not to support any community groups and organizations, instead put that back into just the city buildings?
I thought that was what we were going to handle with the nonprofits, but that got cut out, and it went to tourism, mental health, and homelessness, so it focused on those groups. I thought we were still doing something at least for nonprofits, where that could have handled some of this stuff. I just don't feel comfortable giving some of these organizations the amount of money that they're requesting, and with the minimal amount of knowledge that we're receiving as far as council for justification. The numbers that are just put into some of these documents are just, I don't think are accurate. For QC Arts, we don't even have a project really designed. We have a possible project. We have things that we can't fund at this point that we know we can fill that 50,000 with, but we're putting a placeholder for something that may happen. Where's the ledgering funds? They put up so much, we put up so much, where we can leverage those instead of just giving them a flat out, a check.
And we are not, and actually, we may come back to them and leverage those dollars. Once again, as we talked about, that's what you go back and talk to them, but I lost my train of thought, and I apologize. I was listening to you, Moses. Oh, the other thing we talked, there is still money in nonprofits, being for mental illness and homeless, that monies did not get taken out. They're still there. Those task force, and I think Samantha's going to talk about it a little later here, but those are still out there. So the nonprofit didn't go away. There was also consensus by, if not everybody, almost everybody, that during the application process, they were concerned about that, opening that Pandora because there's so many different organizations, all great organizations, but that you were going to either not be able to satisfy all of them, and/or they get satisfied a little bit that isn't not sustainable, but substantial enough that it does much good for them. And so that's where it was decided. That's where the individual conversations with each council member, these came up.
I guess
to avoid that.
Mayor, I just don't like the optics that we're presenting right now. I can fully stand behind MLK Fun Day. You guys have been there. You've seen what that attracts. We have measurables, what we bring in as far as to the city as far as an event. This could be a staple for the city as far as an annual event, but there's no funding. And it's even, like I said, it's smaller than what I even requested as far as funding. So we can't do that. Those are measurables. And that's citywide. It could grow into a bigger event, but it comes down to funding. Some of these are just clearing out their debt.
Well, the backwater guy,
All of these
okay.
can grow into bigger things, and they all have measurables. I'm telling you, every one of these organizations have measurable outcomes that they can feed to city council.
Okay, but how were these, other than Alderman Robinson's MLK Fund Day, how were these three chosen? What about other events in the city? We didn't have Gumbo Yaya or Jamaica My Weekend this year, and we had people show up in town.
Correct. And that wasn't because of funding. That was because of a lack of anybody to organize it and put it together. There was funding available to do those, but the issue is that is even more at risk because weather related. Those events, a number of years, have lost money because of weather, for the most part. And so it's at risk. Where these other, to pick out these three, this money and these organizations are known facts to be able to grow memberships, grow tourism, grow their programs to help the citizens. And just like MLK, and MLK does a lot of great programs, but these are no different than the Fun Day. It's all trackable. It's all serves the whole city. Every one of these serve the whole city.
So with regards to backwater gamblers, there are numbers in your plan that I provided in terms of the dollar amount of impact as well as the visitors and future plans to bring in visitors. So that's available.
Alderman Poulos, are those numbers accurate?
And you're saying, how do we get to
sorry.
900,000? I'm sorry, it's cut you off, but how do we get to 900,000 per year? So you were saying they bring in 900,000?
That's what I was told, so I'm relying on the organization.
Those numbers were brought in from the tourism, I didn't deal with those numbers. They were brought in based upon the heads in beds. The data was $125 per person per night. You bring in a tourist. And again, those aren't my figures. Those are the ones that the Tourism Bureau brought to us. There was a misprint on the numbers. It wasn't 3,000 people a year. They left a zero off. It's 30,000 people that we get down there per year.
So are you saying that the impact numbers provided by backwater gamblers, there's always modeling software for this kind of thing, that the economic impact was provided by the tourism
Yes.
of Visit Quad Cities?
Yes.
Okay.
Wasn't mine. I have if council would like, I can give you a data that was given to me. I didn't present it because I let them know that the opportunity was there and told them that I was not personally going to apply for it, but that I would certainly give the inside view of it, such as you'll see in your packet. The extension for, this year there was a 5-state tournament that was there. There was also a Division II national tournament that was there. There were 2 events where they provided a water skiing experience for people with disabilities, people that were amputees that normally would not get a chance to do that. In the past, they've also gone out and done the Learn to Ski programs through the park board, where they'll bring people in and, again, build up. It's kind of a jewel down there if you haven't been down there. The club took a site that was nothing but swampland and overgrown trees and made a real nice park out of it. I wish I could say that I had a critical role in it, but I don't, other than, being down there to help them, both from the national side, because I sit on the Safe Sport board for the U.S. Olympic Committee, and to make it a family-friendly event where I don't care if I say the club does not care if you have $10 million in your pocket or you have 2 quarters. You don't even have to have the 2 quarters. You can get in and have a seat, and I've seen several families bring their kids down, and again, they're always welcome, regardless.
Did backwater gamblers submit an actual application or a letter or
nobody.
something?
No, they gave me, they
sent a
provided
letter.
me information. I also requested information from Botanical Center, and there was no really way to put it in this, but there are, like, how many people visit for each year. I talked to the executive director. Personally, there's,
Submitted something in writing. Is that what you're saying?
well, I mean, they provided information, yes, yeah,
So,
because I needed something to put in the document.
okay, I'm just
So-
like, I guess I would have liked to have had that direct information passed along to us.
I put everything in the plan, the direct information, but I mean, I can give you what they provided me. Some of it, well, the exception of backwater gamblers, was just talking to the executive directors of the organizations. Botanical Center does have visitor information I can send out to council, but again, it didn't fit inside that plan. When I was talking with the executive director there, the $92,000 mortgage, apparently at one point they did pay off their mortgage. However, they were struggling financially and they had to refinance. And so that's why they have that $92,000 debt. That was, I don't know how many years ago, Mayor, maybe you can speak to that. Their exhibits are over 25 years old, so this funding would go towards that. Again, this is all in your plan. Also, they have had an overwhelming response from younger people for horticulture. I know I'm now a plant person. That's kind of the new trend. So in terms of programming, they're trying to meet the needs of their customer base, and I guess that's kind of been the holdup. They also want to do some things where I call disproportionately impacted communities or areas with the school system, with the MLK in terms of gardens. They want to get like a mobile bus that's like a greenhouse that is movable so they can go around to the schools and educate that way. So there are a lot of things, and again, that's all in the plan. The QC Arts, Todd and I did talk with Kevin Maynard, and there's some really cool opportunities there. They've got their own kind of stakeholder group that's already kind of vetted some of these ideas, but of course funding's always an issue that again would bring people into Rock Island and kind of put Rock Island as a staple, right? We have the QC Arts here in Rock Island. So those are kind of the three things that just talking individually with you guys that Todd and I got a consensus to include in the plan.
Yeah, and I would like to also add, I don't know if anybody's noticed or not, but there are cruise ships docking in Davenport, and none of them are coming to Rock Island. They're all staying on the Iowa side of the river, quite honestly, because there's not a whole lot of an entertainment tourist draw to bring them over here. So those tax dollars and spending dollars are not coming into our city. But with a lot of these, that will bring tourists into our cities to spend money into our city. So I think that's a broader picture that you have to look at is, what's out there that we are missing that we can easily capture to help with funding.
Also, I want to make note that the Visit Quad Cities, on a regular basis, annually type deal, take a look at the impact of all the different events, whether it be the John Deere Classic, whether it be the marathons, whether it be Backwater Gamblers, all these different events. They take a look at the financial impact and do have a calculator type deal on what the average person per visit spends. And so they've got that data. Anytime anybody wants to contact Visit Quad Cities, they can tell you the average dollars and even in some cases where it's spent, whether it's hotels, fuel, groceries, food, etc. They've got a lot of that detail.
I know I was down there, Jenny, and they actually did stop in the Botanical Center. So
they?
some people
Good.
from the cruise ship did come
Oh,
because I
good.
specifically talked to them.
Great.
That's great to hear.
I just want to make two quick points. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, this money we have. Are we really thinking outside the box to how to effectively spend this money? Once in a lifetime. We're never going to get it again unless another pandemic, God behold, it doesn't happen again. We don't know.
Well, and that's up
Once in
to
a
you
lifetime
guys.
thing. So also with that, so the Visit Quad Cities, I don't know if they are actually, I don't see the numbers for MLK, and Mayor, I know you stated that MLK has some money allocated somewhere else. I don't think we can really look at it that way. I think we have to look at it in what this is actually doing, promoting community involvement, promoting pride of Rock Island. You're bringing in a lot of different tourists. You're bringing in visitors. One thing that's not accounted for with that MLK Fund Day is the amount of money that's spent with the people who are coming from out of town. From organizing that event for a number of years, I know 2,000, 3,000 kids coming from out of town, which are all using hotels, which are all using businesses, which are all using gas here, which are all using amenities that we have within the city. That's not taken into account for that. So, and I have to mention this, it wasn't even brought up. I had to brought it up as a bargaining deal. Well, I'm not gonna support that unless this gets in. So we're not even thinking about something that we have homegrown here in order to support. And I guess that's my bigger issue. It's not even thought up. And most of the council attends this event. but we still didn't even think about supporting that to make it even bigger, because we don't have the festivals downtown anymore. We don't have Gumbo Yaya. We don't have those events. This is the only event we really have besides, stuff other people put in.
We're
We're
still
not even
planning on
looking to
having those
support those
events.
things.
There is hope to have those events. They've been budgeted for in the past, and at this point, as far as I know, people were talking about doing it in the future. It was just a matter, we lost the director or the person that promoter that put it on. Once we find that,
No-brainer.
we
We
can have
have
those events.
something that's already in place. We don't have to
That's fine.
hope and wish that someone's gonna plan it. It's already
That's
planned.
fine. That's fine. Then what kind of money would you like to see in there?
I can get that to you. I don't want to throw out a number because I did that before and it wasn't taken into account. So we'll do that. We'll get the numbers. We'll get the QC visitors to come in and actually give us an assessment of what they think we can bring in. But
That's
believe
fine.
me, it'll be astonishing once you get those numbers.
I agree. Moses, I'm not arguing that they don't.
I'm not either. I'm just making points. Because I have to argue for this because, again, it wasn't even brought up into a discussion. And that's where I'm really uncomfortable with. We're bringing in things like Alderperson Gilbert said. They're not even city departments. We have city departments that could utilize this. We're talking about bringing in visitors. Our buildings are falling apart, but we're paying other people's buildings. I mean,
So are you saying then, is the consensus of council
I'm-
not to give money to any community groups or organizations and keep it all
I'm
for
not
the
saying
inside
anything.
of the city?
I just want us to really take a very close look at what we're doing right now. And I don't think this is the bigger scope of spending a one-time amount of money in this way.
So-
Because we can have a line out the door of organizations that can have some kind of impact with the city that we're not even thinking about.
So let me
Wait,
interject.
I
Okay.
agree wholeheartedly with everything that Alderman Robinson is saying. But we are starting to develop a reputation for behind-the-scenes deals, or let's keep things secret until whatever, so people get what they want. I'm like, we've got to stop this. We have to be able to justify this to the residents.
So I just want to interject there for a second. I've met with you guys individually, the city manager and I have met with you guys individually. We've met multiple times with directors. And so we've had plenty of opportunities over the last, year and a half, or since I've taken over in March, to provide these out-of-the-box type thinking, but this is where we're at. This is based off of what you guys wanted. So if you want to change that, that's fine. We just need to know what direction to go into.
Are we sure we've done that? Because I've been getting calls from individuals saying that when they go into these meetings, they're being told some of the projects, this is our city staff, is saying that it's not eligible. But then we get these spreadsheets and the stuff that's being said that they can't do is being put in here for us to make a decision on. So I want to make sure that that's not what's happening, because that's not what I'm being told.
So all the projects that are in there, I met individually, and I had, as you guys saw, all of the 80-some individual forms that each director had to fill out. As you can see, if you go through the plan, there were a couple that Todd added that primarily pertain to the safety of the city based off a public outcry of the violence going on, and that's the police officer retention, that's the license plate readers and things like that. So other than that, everything that was given to me came straight from departments and individual meetings with council. So anything else that was put in there wasn't. That's the information. So, I mean, I can give more time if people want to keep thinking about outside the box. I do have to caution, though, that these funds have to be allocated and expended by a certain amount of time. Doing a lot of research, and I've done tons of research. What we're doing is very consistent with other unique cities across the country, across the state, and across the nation. So, I mean, it's not like we're doing something that's not outside of the box or inside of the box. This is consistent. Now, my understanding was that we did want to help out community groups and organizations, which is in this plan, and that we didn't want to keep it all for city projects. But if you guys want to, you're talking about the dilapidated buildings and things like that we own. If we want to redo the plan and take out of those, take from the community organizations, we can certainly do so, if that's the direction of council.
But Samantha, I think when you're saying that, you're saying, it's almost like you're contradicting yourself. You're saying that we want to support, other entities outside of the city, but we're picking and choosing which ones. We don't have any consistent way of how these are being brought in front of us. We don't have an application process. We don't have any, I can't go to anyone right now and say, submit this way
Right.
in order to get him put on the thought.
And I
And that's-
originally
and that-
had,
let me- Hold on, more quick.
Okay, I'm sorry,
I
I thought
think
you were
that's very important because it's going to be the optics. We have to go out and talk to our constituents of how did we do this?
Right.
It comes down to us to make this decision, and we got to make the vote saying that we're authorizing this amount of money.
oh, and I understand that, but the consensus of council is not to do an RFP or an application process. And so I need to go off of what all of you want is, not individually, but as a group. And so if you recall back in March, I had put that in there, and based off of all the meetings we've had, that is not the consensus of council to put an application process.
Only reason
So-
I say that is because out of all the meetings I had with you and Todd, I didn't hear anything about botanical. I didn't hear anything about QC Arts. I didn't hear anything about backwaters. I got a call from the mayor. That's how I heard about it.
His meeting was after yours is probably.
But you see
And
what
then
I'm saying?
he made those suggestions. So
But you
anybody could have
see-
made the same suggestions.
see what I'm
Oh, I
saying?
understand, but
So, I mean, because if that's the case,
Certain
yeah,
suggestions are being heard.
I got some things that we can bring forth and we can put back on this list if that's what we're doing. I would rather have it in an organized, structured way. And I understand it. We don't want to put out RFPs, so we
Sure.
have to be very careful of how we are currently doing
okay,
this.
what would council suggest that we do then? What's the consensus of council on how to move forward with this?
I mean, I look at this and, sorry to interject, like, this kind of just doubles the tourism aspect of this. So, right between the aid to tourism for $250,000 and this, you have $570,000 wrapped up in tourism. Trust me, I own a business here. I am absolutely all for bringing people in. But at the end of the day, I still have to sleep. We still have to do the right thing for people. I guess, I love the Botanical Center. My family's been down there since the first day. How do I know that they need $150,000? Maybe 92 would have been the number and that's all they would have asked. I don't know. So I do understand where we don't know what we don't know. Who needs what? You know, I don't see why the aid to tourism is $250,000 when it looks like we're doing a pretty dang good job right here. And that's just me.
Well, because I think those fit into both groups, right? They're nonprofits and tourism.
Yeah.
So what I'm
I
hearing from
agree.
council, the consensus, do we want to do an application process then for these groups?
Can I make one comment? You have to remember that tourism was one of the major components of what ARPA was intended for. And even if we spend, $600,000 on tourism, that's 2% of the money that we have, available to us. So we're certainly not spending a large amount of money in the tourism category, even though it was an industry that was very hard hit. And I see investing in tourism type operations as being an investment, for the long term, because these organizations help make Rock Island a place that's attractive to visitors and for residents, and do bring in guests. So I think it's appropriate to fund these types of things. And Samantha's right, there's two ways of doing it. You can either take an application, or people can propose projects and we can talk about whether or not we want to fund them. And what we really need is just direction. In our conversations, it's been brought up, numerous times that the preferred approach was to provide the input on the projects and then discuss them as a group. And that's part of why we met with individual people, was for people to propose projects. This sort of strategy was brought up very late in the process, so we did kind of have to circle back, and the mayor volunteered to talk to folks about that, and he did. And we included these based on the what was communicated to us. There was a general consensus that the council supported these projects, but we want to talk about them in a public meeting and make a final determination on whether or not these projects are consistent with what you want to do or not.
So I'm a little confused. So if there's no RFP process, then these focus groups for tourism, mental health, and homelessness, are they going to be doing the same thing that went on here where, well, we'll just pick some groups that are doing work in those areas and we'll fund them?
But we would
Is that-
leverage that money. It would be a partnership. So we would just, from the focus groups, we're going to find out what the unmet needs are, where are the gaps, and what can we do to address those. And that's why we have the stakeholders in those groups.
How can you know that without some kind of RFP type process?
I'm not sure. Many other cities have done it without the RFP process or an application process. Some do it with, some do it without. If you guys want to do an application process, I'd be happy to get that for you, if that's what the consensus of council is. if you guys, again, you guys are the drivers here, so you need to give me direction. This is the
It is a
direction that we
slippery
head.
slope, I can
It's
tell
a
you that.
very
But
slippery
if the
slope.
focus groups end up deciding, okay, we're going to fund in homelessness these three groups, and mental health, we're going to fund these three groups. Again, it's the same thing of like, well, how did they get chosen and no one else had an opportunity to even apply?
So I disagree with that, because I think, especially like the homelessness one, if you look at who's going to be on that committee, those are the people who know exactly what needs to be funded. Those are the people who know exactly the focus groups have been set up with stakeholders who know exactly what the problem is, exactly what the gaps are, and exactly how to go ahead and fix those gaps. So I feel very comfortable over the fact that because of how the focus groups have been structured, that you would be able to come out of that knowing who should be funded. And I think the RFP situation is a very, very slippery slope, and I am adamantly opposed to going down that route.
I can tell you in my business, I have a donation form, fill it out. The people that fill it out, and I can't give them 500 free meals. I mean, they get absolutely upset because they thought they should get something just because they filled the form out. So in trying to do the right thing, I'm punished for it, and I do give. I give every Wednesday. It is a slippery slope because people think they should get what they put in for. And when they don't, even if they get some, but it's a little less, they're upset.
But I think with some of these funds that we're talking about giving out, or potentially giving out, where is the leveraging of funds? Where are we having them do some of the work? Because for some of these, we're trying to give them 100. Are we requiring them to match it? We give them 50, they come up with 50, and then we can go from there, see how it goes, instead of just giving them 100?
We can,
'Cause,
yeah,
I
we
mean,
can do that,
At least that
absolutely.
puts some, I understand, they've been here for a while, but we can't just bail people out by just giving them money. And that's for any of them, for anyone that's up there. I mean, leverage it somehow. I mean, we talked about that numerous times. I've heard that term come around so many times when it comes to this. Have these organizations leverage those funds. We give them so much, you get out there and try to match it. How much can you match? What are you putting in instead of just having a connection and putting a request in?
I don't think any of these are bailout. I think all four of these groups that we have identified all have skin in the game. They've all invested money over the years, their own money in this, and I don't think any of them are asking for a bailout of anything. If you go to the Botanical Center and look at what their plan is for the future, you will be absolutely blown away by what the plan is. I mean, Backwater Gamblers has done phenomenal things for this city with no money, all of their own money invested in that. QC Arts, same thing, all of their money. They put in all that programming that goes into our schools to help fill the gaps in the schools. I mean, I think that these groups have invested in this city, and I don't think any of it's a bailout. I think this is a way to go ahead and have them invest more in the city and at the same time bring more people into the city.
So it's
I
like
just
a
want to
plan
correct,
for the future.
I didn't say bailout. I'm just saying I don't feel comfortable
Okay.
just giving them money. Because again,
Okay.
even Alderperson Swanson, when you mention those three, we still forget to mention what the MLK Fun Day has bringing to this city. I mean, if we don't know, that's fine. Just let me know you don't know the impact
Moses.
of that event.
Oh, no, I
and
left
then
that
we'll go.
out.
How do you, Moses, how do you
I left that
feel
out
that
because
the
I know it's a
MLK
great thing. And I
I'm
know
sorry.
that we're gonna fund it. I was just bringing up the other ones that we seen, that the comment being that they aren't invested in our city and they aren't a good investment of our money. That's why I brought MLK Fun Day is phenomenal. It is amazing.
Yeah, Moses, to give back, there is matching dollars. That's one way to leverage this money. The other is, and I keep going back to tourism, that the amount of people that you bring in and what they spend in your city is also a way of leveraging the money. It's not just cash dollar for dollar. It's, once again, if they're eating at restaurants and buying gas and groceries or whatever it is, that's leveraging the money also and giving back.
Figures.
No different than MLK. MLK brings in, you're correct, thousands of people from outside the community. And these people are drawn in as much, if not more, than MLK.
Mayor, I've been saying I would love to see those figures, because I want to see where the metrics are for that. Just like Alderman Healy said before, let's see some metrics with this. I want to see what that, and don't give me an approximation, give me some data. Give me some data that I can use to help me with this decision. And that's something that we maybe need to be doing going forward. Let's stop assuming what they're going to do, what this impact is going to be. Let's use some data to make these decisions. Because again, this is a once-in-a-lifetime thing. Once we allocate this, it's gone. That means that we're stuck with it. So that's why I'm making a pitch, but I'm not making a pitch. I want to ensure that what I agree is going to have a true impact for this city as a whole. And I'm not sure. I want to see this data to ensure that.
In my first comment in this discussion, I said I am requesting 3 to 5 years of impact data from these groups, what they will be using the money for, and I'd like to see how they're leveraging it. And not just with the economic impact, but what they can match it with as well. I think we're entitled to that. And it helps us to justify to our constituents that we are not playing favorites.
Okay, so to summarize it up with this part, because we're gonna move on.
Page 2.
Yep.
We are absolutely gonna move on. You're gonna reach back out to these businesses to get some data and some more information that can be shared with council, and then we can come back and revisit this
Okay,
future date.
okay.
Okay.
Sounds good.
So you can go ahead and move on.
All right, thank you. The other thing that we heard from almost everybody was that, and this wasn't Todd and I asking, this was people coming to us and saying, we need an updated council chambers. And you know what? If you look at the other cities, you guys are probably right. And then I did some more research on what other cities are doing. And many, many, many cities are putting money into their council chambers and their city hall. So based off of our conversations with all of you, or the majority of you, we added that on there. We don't have a cost figure yet, and that's because we just met with you guys a couple weeks ago, and then just getting somebody in here to give us different configurations, you know, the flooring, the seating. As you know, it's out to date and not efficient use of space. And then also in that, there could be a meeting room in here. Because if you look around, we're definitely not utilizing our space. We can make these chairs mobile. So, you know, we have all these events and things, but we can't really hold them in council chambers because there's not really any meeting room configuration that we can work with. So these focus groups that I'm thinking of, that would be a great, you know, if we had these movable chairs we could put in a circle, things like that. And then also heard from the majority, that our city hall, mayor, city manager area was in desperate need of upgrades. I'm sure after seeing it firsthand, you guys are wanting to do that just based on seeing that carpet. So that's where that came from. Are there any questions or discussion on that? Again, we won't have a number for you probably for a couple more weeks.
I would rather see us use general funds for that.
Okay.
That means we just need to budget it, figure out what the cost is, and put it into
Yeah.
our budget and go from there.
Okay. So when Linda Barnes and I met with our auditor and then the finance director for the city of Champaign and then the city of Rockford, and the auditor as well as those finance directors, because they're a lot farther along in the process, these one-time expenditures, they recommended using ARPA and not general fund for these type of things, but you know, that's on the recommendation from our auditing firm. So just kind of put that out there too.
I think this is substandard compared to everyone I've been in, but you know, that's just me. And you know, you want to catch up when Todd's having meetings, when the mayor's having meetings, having 1970s
Economic development's hard in this building.
paneling is.
If you want to impress anybody.
And that's where I go with it, and that's why I'm for this, not because I need a different chair.
Right.
It's more, you know, what we present to the people that are coming in and.
Well, my concern was the chairs that are currently there. They're just nothing short of dangerous.
It's a risk management issue for sure.
I think that one's been broken for 5 years, so.
Okay, moving along then, if we don't have any there. Also, we had put in, this amount hasn't changed, but I did have somebody ask about this. As you know, Moline put out their lateral recruitment plan last week, and I had a phone call from Alderman Healy. So I just wanted to kind of, and this is, Chief Landy's on the phone if there's any questions. This is kind of just very preliminary, but that 250,000, just wanted to show everybody kind of some details there. I believe we're down, 10 officers, Chief? Are going to be down 10, so this would help us bring that number back to what we needed.
That is correct. We are down 9 right now. We have our 10th that will be probably leaving us soon. He's off on long-term disability.
I have a question for the chief.
Okay.
So,
Go ahead, Judy.
Chief, will these bonuses for each category be paid after the completion of each of those 3 years?
Yes. What I anticipated was January of 23 would be that $500 for the first year for retention, followed by the following year and the year after. So we would be done after 3 years. Hopefully in 3 years, we'll see a turnaround in the way things are as far as with recruiting for police, and we can be fully staffed. But again, we're also going to be going into, I should point out, we're going into contract negotiations next year also. So, between this money and what we work out in contract negotiations, hopefully we can be more competitive with the other police departments and making sure that we can bring in the personnel that we need for the police department.
It will bring, I'm sorry.
No, I just had one more question for the chief. Chief, so over the 3 years, the $10,000 bonus for the lateral recruitment, is that competitive with other police departments?
That is just a general number I put in place for right now. For instance, Moline just recently added a lateral entry program. They haven't never had one before. This is new for them, and the reason they're doing this is, again, because recruitment is tough everywhere. What they're doing is, let's say you have 7 years of service with another police department, they will match that 7 years. So you would come in as if you were a 7-year officer with Moline Police Department, is my understanding on how they're doing the program. So what I'm doing is basically putting that $10,000 and saying that over the 3-year period, as you complete the different phases, you come in, this is a way for us to help match what other agencies are maybe at their pay for that period of time. Again, once we get into next year and we kind of see where these numbers are at, we can also, and where recruitment's at. I'm only anticipating one lateral entry over that 3-year period. It could be different. I will tell you, we just hired a lateral entry who came up from down in Missouri, and it's very beneficial for us to do that. But it's not easy. It's not easy to get somebody to leave another agency and come over to a different one. Sometimes, there's always personal issues involved with making that decision, family issues, things like that come into it.
You have some financial savings with laterals, plus they can go right to work immediately. You don't have to pay for them to go to the academy, so that's beneficial. But we'll refine this and bring it back as a policy with some additional guidelines, as well as, some clawback type provisions as well, so the council will see the final version and approve it.
Hey, Chief,
Bill?
thank you for this. I personally I don't think this is enough, and that's just me, honestly. I think January 1st with the new Safety Act, I think it's not gonna be good. I think anything we need to do for our police officers to try to help them out, I would strongly suggest trying to find more funding, but that's me. I'm just one person, so I think that's something we should look into. I think any officer they can bring in laterally, I think he brought up contract negotiations, what our neighbors in Moline have done. I mean, they're blowing our pay out of the water. And, we want good to great officers, and I don't think we should be taking a back seat. So that's just me.
One of the things, if you don't mind, one of the things that is a problem to lure or to recruit lateral entry officers is the amount of money that it costs them to transfer their pensions. So they lose time if they come to Rock Island on their pension fund, on their amount of years of service that they, because the Article 3 funds are not transferable in an easy manner. So an officer comes to Rock Island, he's going to have to pay a significant amount to be able to establish the credible service that he would have had he started here in Rock Island from the very first day. And if we really want to put some teeth into this, you would make some provision to where if we're going to bring somebody in there, we try to help them in some manner so that they can keep that credible service.
So just, I'm looking for some clarification. So
It's
if
very
they-
complicated.
Yeah, so if they have 6 years in one department, and then they wanted to transfer for family reasons or whatever, that 6 years stays with that municipality?
No, they have to have a minimum now on a tier 2, you have to have a minimum of 10 years. It used to be 8 years in order to
But it
to
doesn't
become vested.
transfer?
To become vested. So the only way you can become vested is to transfer that time over, and to transfer it over, the officer has to transfer, the department has to transfer the money that the officer gave, like 9.91% of their salary for those 6 years, goes to the new department, plus the officer has to pay what the other contributions were with interest at 6% per year. So it is incredibly expensive for an officer to transfer their pension from, let's say, Moline to Rock Island, or Rock Island to Moline. There are those that do it, but again, it takes them quite a long time to pay that off. And that is one of the roadblocks that police administrators face in Illinois.
That's a state mandate thing?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
That's a state mandated thing? The requirement, that type of requirement, I mean, who mandates that?
That's state law. That's state statute.
You have to buy your time, because each pension system is different, right?
Yeah, or for police, they're in what's called the Article 3 pension funds, and there's 353 of them in Illinois. And then the fires, they're in Article 4 pension funds, and then IMRF is Article 7 under the Illinois Pension Code.
IMRF is different, because I can go to each IMRF city and bring mine
Right.
with me.
IMRF transfers as long as you're in an IMRF system. The Article 3 does not transfer fund to fund. And again, I feel sorry for the police administrators, because that is a significant roadblock for them to try to bring people in from another agency. And the good side is it helps us keep the people that we have. They don't go to another agency, so.
Okay,
Some
is
of the
there-
laterals you see come from outside of the state, so this doesn't apply to them. I think the person we hired recently came from Missouri, didn't he, Chief? Or
Yeah, that's what he said.
My whole point for bringing that up was it's not, the money that you're seeing here would not just be a gift. More than likely, the officers that we bring in would help use that money to leverage the cost for them to transfer their pension fund.
That's if they worked in the state, though.
If it was me, that's what I would use it for.
No, what I'm saying, because like we said, we just had someone come in from Missouri. They wouldn't fall under that same jurisdiction, because that's just the state of Illinois that does, well, not just, but state of Illinois does that specifically. So if someone from Moline tries to come to Rock Island, that's the loophole they have to go through.
Yeah, if someone from Moline comes to Rock Island, it goes through the process that I just explained.
Right. Okay.
I think that was clear as mud.
That's why they said, okay.
So, and like, again, each one of those, like, we don't have for the facade program or, the support to businesses, those kind of things still need to be developed. So this was just kind of endorsement of the overall plan. Everything's going to have to be brought back to council. Just kind of wanted to remind you guys of that, to vote on and details of the project and so on and so forth, so. Any tweaks to that, of course, will come back for you guys for approval.
And those of you in business in the room know that it is easier to keep a customer than it is to get a new customer. It is easier for us to keep the officer than it is for us to get new officers in.
I agree with you.
So I just wanted to provide, again, this is the overall plan, the updated budget. And we're going to break these down into phases. So, for example, CY22, that's phase 1. So if it's the will of council, if that's the direction of council, to endorse the plan, we could put the 2022 projects in the budget, and then we can start, spending those. So, for example, fire needs those weather sirens this year, the STEAM lab for MLK, and you can see all the 2022, the library, Highland Springs. So that would be phase 1. Then next year we would do phase 2, and then phase 3 in 24, and then anything else would be phase 4 that would carry into 25 and 26, which we don't have a lot of projects that would. So that's restricted funds. And here's the unrestricted, and of course the yellow is what has changed. So if you remember, we had $1 million allocated to city lost revenue based on our individual meetings with council. We had to eat into that based on what the recommendation was for the organizations. As you can see, the city hall renovations does not have a cost because we still don't know that yet. And that would have to come out of, if you guys do decide you want to fund the chambers and the city hall renovations, that would need to come out of either the city lost revenue or the roads, because we had allocated $1 million, for the roads based on the public feedback. And then there is the total budget. Okay. Yeah.
That kind of got cut off in our thing.
Oh, okay. Probably a formatting issue.
The bottom part got cut off.
Oh, okay. And then focus groups. So I have been working to organize these focus groups. Of course, we put out a press release. We have it on our Facebook and our website. I asked people to email me or call me by the 29th, so this Friday. So still going to leave that open. If there's others out there that want an opportunity to serve on one of these focus groups, they still can. However, for the most part, I have these nailed down. Alderman Hurt had volunteered to be part of the mental health stakeholder focus group. And as you can see, we've got some great individuals in that. All of our local community partners that respond to mental health are included in there. I will be doing a doodle poll here early next week for all of those that are on the stakeholder group to figure out a time in October to meet. I will set the discussion questions for those groups, and I will also moderate those focus groups. They will be under OMA, so I will be advertising those. Anybody's welcome to come. I'll post an agenda with the discussion topics ahead of time. So if you know anybody else that's interested, they're more than welcome to come. Homelessness stakeholder focus group, and that is Alderwoman Jenny Swanson. And again, a great array of organizations that focus on homelessness in our area, specifically in Rock Island. And then the tourism, Alderwoman Gilbert and Alderman Parker are both going to be on that one as well. So, and as you can see, we've got Augustana College, we've got QC Arts, Visit Quad Cities, Grand Prix, the Rock Island African American Coalition, Circa 21, Botanical Center, QC Hansen History Tours, and then a resident of Rock Island. So we've got those.
Can we go back to the homeless one?
Sure.
Do we have numbers as far as, kind of where we are with, within the city homelessness?
No, but I could probably get those.
Okay, so what are we looking to achieve with this group?
So what we're going to do with the focus groups is the main objective here is to determine what is the unmet need. Like, what resources do we already have that are working? Where are the gaps and where's the unmet need? They're going to know that. Okay, what can we do? And then we're going to discuss, we're going to problem solve, right? What can we do to address those needs, unmet needs? And that will come from our experts in the field, and they will provide ideas, and I will present everything back to City Council, the results of the focus group, and then decide how we want to move from there. There might be an identified partner in one of these. And I've got those discussion questions. I'll send those to you guys ahead of time so everybody can see those, the topics. So they're very focused on specific things for each group. It's just based off our research and what others have done with focus groups similar in the past. So
I think this is a great way to piggyback our people's knowledge and what.
Absolutely.
If we give you
People-
X amount of money, how can we help this scenario? And I think that gets into both what Jenny and Moses said, you know, we're just trying to get the best bang for the buck. We're trying to parlay, use our resources. All of these people, they know what we don't know. So what can we give you to help out?
Right, exactly. And then citywide map of proposed projects. Of course, again, nothing's been approved outside of the ones we've already brought forward to you for approval. So this is the city of Rock Island, and I like to use census tracts because that's what ARPA likes, right? The feds, they like census tract data. So as you can see, the citywide projects, we weren't able to, pinpoint those specifically. The map would have been very convoluted if we had done so. And some of the projects weren't a geographical location, right? So those aren't on there. And then some of them, we just didn't have information as to where, it's too early in the process. So does anybody have any questions about the map?
For me, that slide didn't come up for me. It's just a blank page for me.
What's that?
The map, it doesn't come up for me.
Okay, you have to open it in PowerPoint.
Gotcha.
If you're opening it in Google, that's why
But
Google.
we don't have PowerPoint.
Oh, you guys don't?
No, we
Oh, I'm
don't.
sorry. I
We
should have
don't
sent that
have
to you as a PDF.
software inside
Okay,
there.
I'll send it to you as a PDF. So it's also in the overall plan, both maps are. So if you pull up your PDF of the plan, you'll see it's the exact same map. So,
Thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. But I was like, yeah, it's definitely there. Google does not let you pull up Microsoft things, so I've learned that the hard way.
Word, we don't get Excel, we don't get PowerPoint.
Yeah, I've had to freak out, like, looking at a document, oh, this is missing. But if you download it it'll show up. But, so, I'll send that as a PDF, Moses, so you have that. Okay, and that's it. So I think based on this, we need to get some direction, Todd and I, of how you guys want to move forward. Alderman Hurd, are you on the phone call now?
I am.
Okay. Just want to note that for the record and also just to give you the opportunity to speak to the overall proposed ARPA plan.
Well, I missed the initial part of it, and I apologize for that. It was in my therapy session. So I echo the comments made by Alderpersons Poulos and Healy regarding the police department. I would like to go back briefly to, because I missed out on the part of the funding that was going towards the Botanical Center. Could I go back to that for a quick second?
Sure.
Sure.
Oh, okay, so is it, I'm trying to remember, I'm not looking at the page. Was it $92,000 then to pay off the mortgage then, is that correct?
That's correct.
And then the additional funds were to be used for what exactly?
So Ryan, the executive director there, had said they have exhibits that are like 25 plus years old. So they're not, the same visitors aren't going to want to see the same exhibit, is what he expressed to me. They also have plans to be mobile and be more active with the Rock Island Milan schools, as well as, they've already got the community garden at the MLK. And so that would also help them with their mobile greenhouse. The idea is a school bus into like a greenhouse, and also meet the programming needs of the changing demographics. So for example, the young people now, they want they don't want to just come once and visit. They want the horticulture programming. They want, the trend with the plants and gardening and things like that. They want to learn how to do those things and become experts in that area. So, but again, I will provide counsel with more details.
Okay, so my only comment on that, and I'm totally in support of the Botanical Center, I think though that, we have all these other things that are also still out there, but I would like to get some cost estimates for some of these other plans that they want to do with that, because I feel like if we're paying the mortgage and that frees up $92,000 that they could use towards some of those proposed projects. So, but I would like to see the numbers of the things that they would like to do so that we have a better picture of the overall plan.
Okay.
Todd, Could you also provide city council with the amount of funding that the city has provided to these groups in the past? Because I know before, I believe we gave over a period of a number of years, we gave $500,000 to the Botanical Center to fix their atrium.
Yeah, we could certainly do that.
But City Arts, I know, gets a really tiny. Yeah, they get a very tiny amount every year. Yeah.
There seems to be a general consensus about the plan, with the exception of the support for these additional community groups. Would that be accurate, I guess, from the council? Would you be prepared to consider that on October the 10th?
I think we just don't want to give gifts.
Yeah, it's
I mean,
kinda
that's
hard.
kind of
Randy,
what I
can you
think.
mute, please? I'm getting
I guess,
feedback.
I guess.
Because we don't, I mean, even when Samantha was explaining to Alderman Hurt, it's a proposed, they think they're gonna get a mobile, they want to do this. There's nothing set in stone, and I understand it's a plan, but give us some kind of details of what you're thinking. And, no, let me backtrack. Have a project. Your project should show exactly what you're looking to get the funding for. And then that will give us more information, again, the data, to help us make the decisions. Because I can come up with something and say, well, this is what I'm thinking to do. And just like Alderman Swanson always says, are we sure? How do we track that? Because there's nothing concrete saying that this is the project that they're gonna have in place. How do we make sure that we're, even though this may be unrestricted funds, we wanna ensure that we can report back on that. This is what they're gonna do. Because
So-
that was a concern with the nonprofits. We don't
And you're
know for
exactly
sure
right.
what they're gonna do with the money.
You're exactly right. So again, Linda and I met with the auditor. What she said to do is do a sub-recipient agreement and treat it like you were still gonna, even though we're taking it out of unrestricted, we still treat it as we're having to report it, even though we don't, thank goodness, because I heard it's not fun to report those things. So you're exactly right. So we would have to have something like that, clawbacks and things like that in an agreement. Definitely. Yeah, that's a good point.
But I thought you said that each project individually would be coming back to council for approval when
Absolutely.
it comes up, whether it's, if it's going out for bid or whatever that
It
case.
would, and we would have if you were to identify that these amounts were acceptable to include in the plan, we would get with each of these groups and develop an agreement, which would provide for a specific scope of how the money was going to be spent, and then reporting requirements to, follow up and indicate that they had spent it in that way, and if they didn't, what would happen with that.
I guess where I look at it is, let's compare Hallberg and the Backwater Gamblers, okay? Hallberg came to us with a plan and said, we want $150,000, it's for this, it's for this, it's for this. We're gonna bring this in. And to keep the Botanical Center out, let's use Backwater Gamblers. They come to us and say, we want $100,000, we're gonna put new seats in, we're gonna do a new boat, it's gonna bring X amount of people in. That's something tangible, that's not just, here's $100,000, do whatever you want. I guess that's what I would like to see that, and I think that's only fair. I think it's.
Okay.
And that was always the intent. I think
Absolutely.
what this was done, presented in this fashion was because we weren't sure if the council wanted us to pursue these or not. So we didn't want to spend a whole bunch of time working out, projects and specific dollar amounts and all these other things if the council didn't want to entertain these at all. So I think that's kind of the process. Get some kind of input or direction from the council on whether or not, in theory, they would support these projects, given that they're, more developed with measurable outcomes, specific expenses and things like that. So I think that's kind of where we are on these. I think everybody has the same intent, which is to, make them very specific in terms of how it's going to be spent and how it's going to be monitored and how it's going to be reported. It's just that we don't want to put all that work in if the council didn't support these at all.
So Samantha, this is Alderman Hurd. I will say I'm in support of all of the projects. I do think, however, I think the Backwater Gamblers has a specific plan. I do think that is a definite need. I agree with all of them. And I am supportive of the $92,000 for sure going to the Botanical Center. It's just that additional money I'd like to see where those projects are actually spent, or where that money is being spent. But I am in support of all those. That's my opinion on that.
Okay, is it my understanding from council then, other than the community groups and organizations, that if we just leave that out, or maybe not out, but leave that blank and not, and bring that information that you guys are requesting, the overall plan, other than those things, you guys would endorse that? Or do we still have more work to do? I guess as Todd and I just are wanting the direction for the 10th, if we should bring that forward for endorsement. Again, you're not rubber stamping it like, oh, yay, and we're gonna go spend the money. It just gets adopted in the budget by the phases, and then we go through the process, just like we do with every other project.
So is there going to be a vote on
Yeah,
October 10th?
that would be
Yes.
the intent, would be to approve the plan on October the 10th.
Through a resolution. It would just be a resolution saying, we endorse this plan, and there might be things in there that you don't, then you have the opportunity to vote against that when that comes to it. So
on
if-
the 10th, it's not going to be presented like it is currently, right? We're going to have more data to help us with that decision? Because currently, what I'm seeing right here, there's no way I'll support this.
These four groups.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's fine. If you want to leave those.
Oh, yeah,
out
I'm
for-
taking
yeah,
those,
if you wanna
I'm gonna
those
leave that
out.
as I think it's my understanding that you guys all wanna somehow support community organizations. It's just the process. Some want an RFP, but it sounded like a majority just didn't want that.
You want to leave those out on the
Yeah.
plan that we bring back on the 10th, I think that's fine. But we do want to have an understanding of whether or not we should move forward with putting together project plans for each one of these.
I vote for moving forward and putting the plans together.
I mean, I think they, in order for us to even have the indication that they were going to support this, I think they need to do that work and put the project plan together. If we support it or
Sure.
not, that work still should be done, because we need to see the data to see if it's going to, if it's worth our time to even invest into it.
Absolutely, but I think instead of holding up the entire rest of the plan, so like, we can get the fire sirens and things like that, we leave that, so you guys aren't endorsing that part, we kind of leave it, like, we know everybody on council, some form or fashion, supports helping community organizations, leveraging them or whatever. So leaving that blank, not putting in Botanical Center, not putting in Backwater Gamblers, and then I would present that information to you over the coming weeks, the next week or two, but you're endorsing the overall plan, and then we can go back and amend it to put that in there. Is that, Todd, what you're thinking?
Can you earmark $320,000? I think that's what that adds up to community engagement, and then
Or-
we detail that when.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Because just because you guys are saying we're giving $300,000 to community engagement,
320,
that doesn't
yeah.
mean Todd and I, and we're gonna go out and start handing out checks, because those all still have to come back through council.
Yeah.
Actually,
So-
to make it a whole lot cleaner, you pulled this $320,000 out of the $1 million revenue loss, correct? So
Correct.
put it back
In the revenue
into the
loss?
revenue loss. So put the revenue loss back at $1 million. And then when we get the additional information on these three projects, then at that point, if we decide to move forward, we know that that's where the money's gonna come out of.
Anybody else? Moses, Judith?
Do we know when we, excuse me, when we may get some numbers for the renovations?
Hopefully, he said he got really, because we're asking people to like give us free estimates. So I'm kind of working on their,
Or be too pushy.
yeah, I know, but I'm hopefully he can get back to me this week, if not early next week, because I touched base with him on Friday.
Because that's,
And
I mean,
he said, I haven't forgot about you, and then we've got another guy that's gonna come in and just kind of give us some,
that's more than just painting. We're talking about kind of redesigning.
I would say
this
you're
space.
looking at end of October
for,
for numbers.
oh, okay, the one had told me maybe in the next, but you know more than that, about that than I do.
Yeah.
Island firms?
So it's Pat is it Mahar, who's in Rock Island. He's on the library board, I think. And then it's, we're gonna, Mayor and Todd had talked to Jeff Dismer also in Rock Island.
This is a project that'll probably take a little bit longer and probably feed into the budget process for next year. And we can look at whether or not we use ARPA, or if there's some general fund surplus, we could do that. But what we've asked them to do is kind of look at it as, a cheap alternative, medium alternative, more expensive alternative. So we don't just come back with a big chunk project. We'll have some options, depending on what the council would like to do.
And I think that's
Chevy
why
and the Cadillac is what we're gonna get.
That's why I made the response that I would rather see this budgeted into general funds, because this is not going to be a very quick project. You're talking about moving things out, those are anchored into the floor, so that stuff has to come, I mean, we don't know if this is asbestos. There's so many different variables we have to take into consideration.
It is, because it's not a
It
12 by
is.
12 tile.
It's already been verified, you're
You can
right.
always tell if it's not a 12 by 12 tile, it's
Yeah,
asbestos.
it definitely is. And let me show you, so based on the budget, so this 10 million, this unrestricted, this is all gonna be general fund, right? So that will come, because remember, we allocated the 10 million to the police and fire salaries. So this, all these here are all general fund.
We'll continue to track it as ARPA funds, but for all practical purposes, it becomes part of the general
General fund.
fund surplus.
Oh,
I was gonna say, I'm looking at Linda, she can correct me if I'm wrong.
so
I'm not.
we do have in there, the 1 million for road repairs. Is that for like
We
maybe
do.
doing some residential streets or something? Worst to the worst. or something?
Mine's pretty bad.
We've talked about it a little bit, but haven't presented a specific plan. Mike, you want to share your thoughts on it?
Well, that would just be one street.
That's a
Yeah.
that's a BB at a freight train.
That's the problem with the $1 million. It doesn't go very far when you're talking about entire street. When
And we
talk-
need to keep educating our residents about that, you know?
Potentially it could be used for grant, to match on grants and things like that. too.
Right. I think what we explained before was, we have our capital plan, we could roll it into a project that's already on the capital plan, or we could look at a pavement patching contract so that every ward would get a certain amount of money to do some pavement patching in their ward, kind of like we currently do with our current contract. Or a sidewalk some type of street infrastructure. We don't have a plan yet, but we'll come forward with a plan here soon.
The pavement patching, is that the truck that goes out, or is that?
No, this would be either removing and replacing concrete, but in smaller sections.
Okay.
Or coming in and milling the asphalt and putting all new in.
Okay.
Yeah, so on 20th Avenue between
28th,
5th Street and 26th Street, maybe? They did that, I think.
Was that
When
this
that was
year?
one of the worst streets, because I used to take it coming back from IV.
was that this year?
Yeah.
Okay,
Because
that-
all of a
that would
sudden it was
be-
like, I had avoided it because it was just so full of
Yeah,
holes.
so that's our pavement patching program.
Okay, and they did a really great job on that particular street, and I may be off on the numbers. But then the next street, which is the one just east of 24th Street, it looked like they had attempted to do it, but it wasn't as good a job, and there's still a bunch of holes
Okay.
there. But on some streets, that process worked really well.
Yep.
Well, and I think that depends on if you mill and fill or if you just patch.
Correct, yeah, if we mill and fill, you usually see about 10 years out of the mill and fill, but patching, is very weather dependent, and it's just a temporary measure.
This looked more like mill and fill.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. I had the list of locations, I
Yeah.
wasn't prepared for
I
that
was
specific
pleasantly
area.
surprised to see that it had been done.
Oh, that depends on your base, if you got a good base or not.
I'm sorry?
I said some of it depends on whether or not you have a good base, on how long it
Yeah.
lasts too.
Yeah, the longevity is definitely how good the base is and how long it lasts.
So do you have everything you need, Samantha?
I think so.
Okay.
Todd?
Yeah, I think we're good.
Okay,
Thank you all.
thank you. Thanks all.
All righty. Then do I have I lost my agenda, a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Judith. All right. Do we need a roll call or just all in favor?
Yes.
Roll call.
Alderperson Poulos,
Yes.
Healy,
Aye.
Robinson,
Aye.
Hurt,
Aye.
Gilbert,
Aye.
Swanson.
Aye.
We're adjourned.
Okay. So you have till 6:45.